She's making videos about the abolition in Brazil, and all she talks about is the men involved. As if there weren't women involved as well in the abolition in Brazil.
But of course, there were women involved in the abolitionist movement in Brazil. And this is why, my friends, I'm bringing you this very video speaking about great female abolitionists. I have separated a video only for the women involved, and you can bet that they were actively involved in this movement. Hello folks, it's me again, Amanda Enderman, your trusty tour guide in the wonders of the wonderful city, also known as Rio de Janeiro. Did you miss me? But before I get right onto the theme of the video, best believe that in this video there's a lot of stuff to cover. I have to remind you that I'm currently offering walking tours through the city of Rio, and all of them are listed on my website, which the link will be in the description box below, as well as in the first fixed comment. So all you have to do is click there, text me via WhatsApp, that's very important, make your reservations, and let's get to know the city of Rio in person, folks! With me, Amanda Enderman, your trusty tour guide, of course. And now without further ado, let's get right on to the theme of the video! The first female abolitionist that we're going to be talking about in this video is Maria Firmina dos Reis. The very first Brazilian woman to write a novel. Judging by the time period, very likely a romantic novel. And I have already spoken about the Brazilian romantics in a previous video on this channel, which I will leave the link of it for you in the cards above, so check it out if you like, and I highly recommend it. She used literature as a tool to fight for the end of slavery, much the same way as Castro Alves did. So we can say that a female version of Castro Alves. She wrote not only about the inequality lived by the slaves, but also about the inequality experienced by women during this time. And in 1887, she wrote the short story The Slave, specifically the female slave, a escrava in Portuguese. Fancy that, in the same period of time, the famous conductor Carlos Gomes was composing the opera Il Escravo, which translates to the male slave, and Maria Firmina dos Reis, in 1887, wrote a short story about the female slave, a escrava. There you go. The next female abolitionist that we're going to be talking about is Adelina. Adelina was a saleswoman who sold cigars and cigarettes in the streets of São Luís do Maranhão, and also she acted as an informant. You know, she gave the abolitionists a heads up whenever the police was intending to disrupt their meetings, their protests, and their actions. Also, she participated in several of these protests and gatherings and such, and helped in the escape of several slaves.
But Amanda, how did she know when the police was planning to act and when the police wasn't planning to act?
As a saleswoman, she had ease in transiting without raising any suspicion. And of course, I believe she sold her wares also to the policemen. And then we can easily assume that while selling, she talked here and talked there, and then gathered the very privileged and very strategic gossip in this case. Oh boy. The next abolitionist that I'm going to be talking about in this video is Maria Tomásia Figueira Lima. She was born in 1826 in a city in the interior of the state of Ceará, that's in the northeast of Brazil, and she moved to Fortaleza after marrying the abolitionist Francisco de Paula de Oliveira Lima. She was the co-founder and very first president of the Society of the Freeing Women of Ceará. There was a society only of women in Ceará, which was composed of 22 women from influential families, so from upper class families, which argued in favor of the end of slavery. But they didn't just stick to arguing. At the end of the very first meeting, so right from the get-go, they signed 12 letters of liberation of slaves, and they were able to get slave masters to sign 72 others of those letters, freeing 72 other slaves. This group even managed to get financial support from the emperor himself, the Emperor Dom Pedro II. As I always say, the imperial family was very much in favor of the abolition of slavery. If anyone tells you that they were neutral or that they did nothing, or even worse, that they were against the abolition, couldn't be further from the truth. Otherwise, they wouldn't be financially supporting these groups. The next abolitionist that we're going to be talking about today is none other than Chiquinha Gonzaga. I have already spoken about her in a previous video in the channel as well, when I spoke about 5 musical genres born in Rio but which aren't samba. And I'll also leave the link of this video in the cards above if you want to check it out. She was the very first professional pianist, composer, and conductor in Brazil, the very first woman to do all these things, I should say. Born right here in Rio, and as all the women who came from wealthy families, she was brought up to be a lady of the court, get married, have children, and nothing more than that. But she made a name for herself as a musician, as a composer and conductor, as I mentioned before, and of course suffered a lot of discrimination because of that, because those things were all big no-nos for women to do. They were not approved in the society of the time. And she started selling sheets of her music door to door in order to raise funds for the Confederação Libertadora. Remember that I spoke about this in the video about the great male abolitionists, as well as I believe in the video speaking about the abolition. So with the money she raised, she was able to buy the freedom of a slave called José da Flauta, which was also a musician, a flutist, as the name suggests, and a very dear friend of hers. So she was able to buy his freedom. Last but definitely not least, in fact, I guess you could say I saved the most high-ranking one for last, Princess Isabel, the daughter of Emperor Dom Pedro II herself, was actively involved in the abolition. For this reason, she received threats from landowners which would make people stand up against the heiress, which they called, oh, the name escapes me now in English, but in Portuguese, atrevida. Someone who is bold, someone who does things that people don't approve of and doesn't care about. And it's a derogatory term in Portuguese, so they would call her that in order to diminish her. But even with that, she would not omit herself. She would not pretend like she was neutral, and she would still actively help in this movement. And one of these instances was that she protected the Quilombo of Leblon, which I mentioned in the video about the abolition, when the Baron of Cotegipe and the Chief of Police, Coelho Bastos, were going to massacre the people there in 1886. So you can see that she was very actively involved. As a matter of fact, all these women were actively involved. That's all for today. I hope you liked the video, and if you did like the video, be sure to hit that like button, then right after that, hit that subscribe button, but most importantly, hit multiple times on that share button so that you can share this video with as many people as you possibly can, so that each time more people may know about the wonders of the wonderful city. And as usual in this channel, I'll see you in the next video. Bye!